Well, welcome to LA, the cannabis capital of the world. Thank you all for being here. And my name is Michael Straumietis. I am the CEO of Advanced Nutrients, BigMike's Blends, and the Nocturnus Labs, which is a cannabinoid research incubator being built right here. It's a $20 million lab.
My name is Danny Keith. I'm the CEO of Cannabis Club TV. I work with Tommy Chong as one of our main influencers, and what we really strive to do is tell the story and educate the customer.
Short and sweet, guys. I am Eben Britton. I'm a former NFL player. I played 6 years in the league with the Jaguars and the Bears as an offensive lineman. I got into the cannabis space, into cannabis advocacy, activism, if you will. You know, through my career, I suffered a laundry list of injuries. How that's dealt with in the NFL is lots of prescription pills, had a handful of concussions, and through that, cannabis was really my preferred source of pain management. You know, when the pills, opiates in particular, made me feel insane, irritable, made it difficult to sleep and recover, you know, I could constantly come back to cannabis, and it was the one thing that helped me recover. It helped me heal from, you know, long day of grind, 3 hours of full padded practice, smashing into other 300-pound individuals hundreds of times a day. You know, that does a lot of damage to your skeletal system, to your brain in particular. And, you know, coming out of that experience, feeling like I had, for the most part, my body and my mind intact, you know, learning about the neuroprotectant, antioxidant qualities of cannabinoids in the brain following brain trauma and concussions. I do a lot to push the NFL to remove cannabis from its banned substance list, as it looks to be the #1 remedy to their biggest issue, which are concussions and CTE, which is affecting just about every guy that plays football, whether it's from high school to the NFL. 87% of football players tested positive for CTE. That's from high school to the NFL. 99.9% of NFL brains tested positive for CTE in a Boston University study that came out probably about a year ago now. So I created an organization called Athletes for Care, which is a resource and education platform for athletes in their transition out of their careers as pro athletes, as well as, you know, educating them on the medicinal benefits of cannabis as opposed to prescription pills. And so it's great to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
So the panel's about to be about medical cannabis, but in the scenario, the NFL, I always imagined it would be better for the players to actually have preventative medicine, right? That there should be probably neuroprotectants in their bloodstream during the game. This term medical seems very reactionary. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that, you know, right now, the NFL unfortunately continues to run from their issues. I think it's funny that you can watch a football game now and they have PSAs talking about new helmet technology, which does nothing, as we know. They're talking about coaches are really concerned about the well-being of their players. And, you know, it's bullshit, frankly, you know. Cannabis is something that, you know, our federal government has a patent on cannabinoids as neuroprotectants and antioxidants. The NFL has a major issue with concussions. These are guys, you know, CTE, the wreckage that it causes is, you know, you're a 40-year-old man and you're already being diagnosed with stage 2 dementia. You know, I have friends, guys who have played in the league who are in, you know, real dire need of anything to get them out of it. And so, you know, the NFL seems to be very slow to take on this conversation. I think they're starting to approach it a little bit. Other leagues have been more proactive. You know, it really comes down to the owner's relationship with the players. You know, it's since you're a rookie coming into the league, it's about protect the shield. You know, everything you do as a player is about maintaining the integrity of the league rather than putting that before yourself. And the NFL owners have a long history of turning their backs on players. Look at Colin Kaepernick right now. They've totally demonized him and ruined his career, essentially. And power to him for taking them to court for it. You know, so I've had conversations with NBA owners who are very, you know, excited to support their players in any way they can. You know, you see with guys like Al Harrington, Cliff Robinson, these guys are really making strides. David Stern, former commissioner of the NBA, saying that guys should have access to cannabis. You've got Steve Kerr talking about it with the Warriors. You know, so they're much more proactive and actually do care about players' well-being. You know, this isn't like a boo-hoo thing for the NFL players. You know, it's really on the NFL players at this point to make a stand for themselves. You know, don't go out and play that Thursday night game. Stay in the locker room until you start getting your demands met, because at this point, you know, the PA is really just a front for the NFL. You know, it's all funded by the league. And when you walk in there, even me as a former player, they don't care about former players. And, you know, aside from that, they're not really looking to go up against the league in anything that matters. You know, I think at this point, with everything that's happened, all the conversations that have been going on, the opiate abuse in the league, NFL players are 4 times as likely to abuse opioids than the average American. And so, you know, they have a number of issues that cannabis can solve. I think it'll be a bargaining chip for them on the table coming into this new collective bargaining agreement. You know, but what it's going to be is, you guys play 2 more games, maybe we'll allow you to use cannabis. Or at least in the states where it's legal, you can access it. But I think that's still a long stretch for the league at this point.
And are you seeing traction in other sports, like NHL obviously plays across borders with Canada, and is this, can we leverage the other athletic associations to try and make change?
For sure. I think that, you know, the NFL will make a change at, you know, the very last minute that they can. You're totally right on. The NHL is much more interested in the cannabis conversation, allowing their players to use it. A guy that is a co-founder with me at Athletes for Care, Riley Cote, has made some tremendous strides in getting the NHL Players Association to start having these conversations about cannabis, at least for their former players, and then, you know, who knows, maybe you'd get it removed from the banned substance list. But, you know, the NFL is in a unique position because they have so much influence. You know, they could really, you know, I challenge the NFL over and over again. Maybe one of these times I say it, they'll read it. But, you know, they could really be the ones spearheading this new era of medicine. You know, they could be spearheading this idea that these cannabinoids can be used to treat traumatic brain injuries, as well as, you know, they've got a great opportunity for, you know, the best case study for cannabis as a preventative medicine, you know, in their players and every team in the league.
Well, Mike, you've been in this industry longer than I have, so what's your perspective on this?
What? On what precisely are you asking?
You've got a lab started now. You've been making nutrients for many years. You've got a long track record.
Here's the deal. Every one of you who are sitting here in the audience is an influencer that will positively show cannabis in the way that it must be shown. I'm so glad Netflix got rid of the show Disjointed. I'm sick of seeing the typical stoner stuff and them making fun of us and laughing at us. Think about this. For the last 40 to 50 years, the general public has been indoctrinated falsely, given false information, and been brainwashed. And it's going to take a while to unravel it. It's going to take all of us in this room, whether it's the state level, the local level, you got to get busy and start either writing articles Eben here, he's a creative writer. He did something very smart. He learned how to write. Write white papers. Inform the public. Get rid of the stigma, and let's enter into the new age of what cannabis really is about and what it can do for people. I don't care if it's recreational, nutraceutical, or pharmaceutical. Everybody deserves to have great delivery systems, safe and standardized products. And everyone sitting in this room can have a hand in it if you choose to. And I'm asking you to do it. Go back to your cities where you came from, start writing articles, getting on TV, anyone who will listen to you, and do not allow them to stigmatize cannabis in a negative way, because we don't deserve it, and we've worked too hard and too long, and this plant is an amazing plant that has so many properties to heal people in so many levels. I don't care if you're a recreational user or pharmaceutical user. To me, you're all patients. You're medicating for a reason, and we all deserve safe, standardized products.
Yes, I like that. I'd offer you to add into the discussion. I also think the whole recreational medical thing is a bit of a misnomer. It's like it's some sort of forced dichotomy that doesn't really exist. If you don't have enough of the form or of recreation, you're going to find out needing that you need the medical. So you obviously have had
Absolutely.
all the same experience. How about you, David? What's your feeling this?
Well, I mean, that's exactly why, we got into the business and started doing the in-dispensary broadcast network, is because of the stigma. I mean, being in the NBA, we had players that were using CBDs and using marijuana. In fact, the teams would prefer it versus them going out and drinking and getting in trouble. So to me, I had a kind of an entourage effect with, we had just finished the 2015 season. Things were going good. All of a sudden, Tommy got rectal cancer. My wife got a brain tumor. My dad passed away from opioids. And at that particular moment, I left the team and I went full bore into Cannabis Club TV. And I agree with Mike on the sense that even though Tommy's our influencer, he's an amazing activist. And, the campy side of cannabis is not always well received, and it's our biggest weapon used against us. And I think for us, we try to really focus on bringing educational content, whether it be how to grow, how to cook with cannabis, topics of discussion, new financial information. It's about the education. And to Mike's point, we live in an era where every single one of you guys can be an influencer, and you can help spread the word. And it's really about having that discussion with people, asking them what their point of view on it is. A lot of it's just fear. And I think the benefit of having the science, platform and having that relationship with cannabis and learning words I've never heard before, is how we're going to be able to reach a lot of these patients. And so, we need to make people feel as comfortable that they go buy a bottle of whiskey, that they're able to feel just as comfortable to buy the cannabis to treat their nausea for some reason.
Yeah, indeed. And we're seeing that now. We're seeing a massive migration of the alcohol industry into cannabis. And it's my belief that that's going to echo itself with the pharmaceutical industry. We're going to see Tylenol go away. We're going to see ibuprofen go away. We're going to see aspirin go away because we have safer alternatives. I mean, for those out there, Tylenol AM404, right? This is an endocannabinoid mimetic that is made when your liver digests Tylenol, and it makes a toxic byproduct in the process that's sometimes been attributed to in utero autism events, all types of other overdose-related issues you can have with your liver. But we have all these cannabinoids now that are going to march in, and at some point, I think pharma's going to stop lobbying and start buying. And investing in these other cannabis companies. And so I think that next wave is coming, and what we're seeing right now going on in Canada is just the start. Much more to come.
Here's an interesting statistic. New patients, new medical marijuana patients who are coming in for the first time into the dispensary are 56 years of age. They also spend 3 times more than the recreational client will as well. So pain management is going to be huge.
Aging demographics. I say that all the time. I think medical is going to be bigger than rec. It's just we haven't recognized it yet.
Yeah, on that point, Big Mike, my wife's family is very straight-laced, we'll call them. Pasadenans. God bless them. Love them to death. But, since being on this path of really cannabis advocacy, just being outspoken about it, educating at just about every family function party I go to, talking about, do you know we have an endocannabinoid system in our bodies? And since then, I've really, it's been first my wife's uncle, then her parents, and they're coming to me and they're like, Eb, I can't sleep. I'm like, well, I got something for you, And immediately they're converted into believers, from people who were really affected by the stigma, growing up in the 60s and 70s, having this idea that, it's the devil's weed, there's no place for it in a family setting, in a family atmosphere. And they're like, wow, this stuff really works. It takes me from waking up, every couple hours throughout the night, not being able to get a good night's sleep, to waking up feeling refreshed and recovered. And I think that, as it comes to influence, like Big Mike was talking about, getting into just at your local level. I mean, your influence, you can have a positive influence on this thing, just starting at your family functions. Have a conversation at the dinner table, and you never know, you're going to change, one or two minds, and then the ripple effect of that, and how many people continue out of that you positively influence about the power of this plant. Because the truth is, it's non-toxic. It's a 10,000-year-old remedy, probably older. It comes from the earth. There are no side effects. It's never killed anyone. Helps you sleep. We produce these same chemical compounds in our body. It's amazing. And continuing to inform people about these things, I think it makes a difference. You make an impact. I had a really interesting conversation with Dr. Bonnie Goldstein just a minute ago about this. It's kind of crazy, how you can affect, even she was telling me about her parents, how she's got them using cannabis tinctures. Yep. So.
Yeah, to Eben's point, I've talked to a lot of doctors, not obviously in this conference. They have no idea that we have an endocannabinoid system. They have no idea we have CB1, CB2 receptors. So when you educate, things that you take for granted that, well, everybody knows that, let me tell you, the general public has no idea. They don't know the difference between cannabis, indica, sativa, or a hybrid. So start with the basics and educate up.
I think it's a great point, because we went through a very similar thing this year with our father, and we were educating folks at Dana-Farber, right? So we get in there, and it's a typical PSA test. They do some scans and everything else, and the treatment is kind of a protocol. And we say, well, hold on, let's sequence this thing. And we discover he has this mutation that's known as a BRAF K601E variant. Okay, for those in the cancer space, they're really familiar with this variant because there's a neighboring amino acid called V600E that is heavily studied, and Roche has drugs that target it, but nothing for one amino acid over. Like, it's crazy, right? Foundation Medicine then gives you this report that says, well, these are all the experimental drugs that might work for it. They're in phase 2B trials. Good luck. But you want AKT inhibitors. And of course, having read about AKT and mTOR, now, well, cannabinoids are potent AKT inhibitors. Why aren't we using those? Bring in all the papers, show them, and they're like, go for it. We support you. No problems with that at all here, which I was quite surprised by, because we had other experiences where when he got hospitalized due to other scenarios, they would end up in a hospital that was like, you can't have that on premise, get out of here. They almost threatened to send him the $30,000 bill for having used it on site. And so there's different education that needs to go on in different hospitals. I think the cancer centers are aware of this. They see that people are using this with success for nausea and for pain. But many of the other ER doctors that might handle patients getting rushed in due to an adverse event in cancer are oblivious to it, and they're held down to certain rules and regulations that don't allow any of this stuff on site. And they're the ones we got to work on.
I'm fully convinced that if my dad was able to, he was a veteran, so he was unable to take cannabis if he got tested positive, and they did test for it, but they had no problem giving him 900 half-milligram pills or 5-milligram pills of Oxycontin, so, and literally killed him. I'm certain if we were able to get in, and there's a lot of, businesses that are popping up and going into the old folks' homes, if you will, and like talking to the patients. I mean, my 74-year-old mother-in-law, Japanese, very strict, no way to smoke weed or cannabis, sorry, is now using CBD. So it's like, and it came from actually her doctor referring it to her, like, hey, this is going to be the best for you. We really got to ask our doctors too to kind of look into that. What's your doctor's position on cannabis? How are they willing to look into that? I'm living in Santa Cruz. I've got a beneficial bubble. Basically, everybody embraces cannabis there, but it's a pretty small bubble when you get out of it.
Look, the United States has to lead the way to educate the world. I was just reading today, if you're a citizen of South Korea and you come to a medical marijuana state and you use medical marijuana that's perfectly legal in that state, it's the same thing as breaking the law in South Korea, and you're liable to get 5 years in jail. In Abu Dhabi, if you go there and they take your blood and they find cannabinoids in your blood, it is exactly the same as possession. Be careful where you travel, but here's the real point. United States and Canada must educate the rest of the world and society, because we are, to your point, we're living in a bubble here. Once you step outside of this bubble, it's extremely different. I travel all over the world, and I get in a lot of conversations about cannabis, and a lot of governments are still very negative. They don't understand.
Yeah, I see it everywhere. This medical journey that we went through with her father was just eye-opening as to how the amount of ignorance that's out there on this pathway and the suppression that's going on.
Yeah, by the way, all these people who are against it, soon as one of their family members gets ill and tries cannabis and is successful with it, it changes immediately. I've seen this happen so many times.
I agree. Well, right after my wife's surgery, we managed to mitigate pain and nausea from a full craniotomy, peach-sized tumor, with indicas and CBDs. And her neurologist is like, "You're healing really well. You're not refilling your prescription. What are you doing?" And we told her, and she's from Stanford. She's like, "Keep doing it. Just keep doing what you're doing." That's what triggered my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, who's a 25-year master sergeant in the Marines. It just takes somebody, having that personal experience to then transfer out, and then they're the biggest, they're like the best advocate. They tell everybody. She's telling all her, March On fans, like when she goes and plays cards, like, "Hey, I'm using CBD. I catch it because I hear CBD, but the rest is Japanese,
A lot of times I've had a few surgeries, and they always prescribe me these opiates, and I said I'm not going to take them. They go, "Well, what are you going to do?" I go, "I'm going to take CBD and THC," and they watch me do it, and every one of them, when I'm done with the surgery and I've healed, they go, "Tell me more about what I can do and how can I get some of this to give to my patients." Every one of them.
Yeah. Well, we had one other story I'll share, which was father had to get a pacemaker put in throughout this whole cancer treatment because some of the cancer drugs were triggering his AFib and going into VTAC, so it was one complication after another. So he ends up going in for the pacemaker in Manchester Hospital, and we figure, all right, we don't know what type of anesthesia they're going to give him. Let's wean him off. Wean him down for a couple days, bring him in. All the nausea comes screaming back. They get the pacemaker in, but there isn't a single drug in that hospital that will get rid of the nausea. And so we ask, okay, where's the Marinol? Do you have Dronabinol on site? And they're like, "No, that one is locked away. We don't have easy access to that thing." And so we're like, well, can we just give him some CBD? Like, not on site. After about a good day of this, they realize he's getting dehydrated. It's not under control. Bless the nurses involved in this field, because they just said, go get it, and we're going to lock the door and do what you got to do. 30 minutes later, he stood up and walked out of there, and they looked like they saw a ghost. Every one of them was interested in CBD, and that is something we need to do more of. And I'll also throw it to the vets out there. I'm finding a lot of people who have pets that have cancer or have other types of pain, and the vets are on it. Like, "No problem, CBD, you got it. Let's get it. Order it online, and we'll give it to them. And if it's not the exact percentage, who cares? It's these dogs are facing some grim circumstances."
No doubt, I give my dog CBD, a little THC.
There you go.
Every day. He's got bad hips. He's an English bulldog. He's got, bad hip dysplasia, and he's gonna turn 10 And I mean, since giving him the, little tincture, I'll put it on his food. I mean, he's like a puppy again. It's pretty amazing.
It's funny how with animals we're preventative most of the time, but humans were more reparative. I have a little Chihuahua, no teeth, same age, 10, and she's jumps up and down too much, frail. Give her some CBD and it's like boom, just takes off, and they want it. Like they know when you're bringing it out too. They're like, oh, here it comes.
Yeah.
So we got to get in the same mindset as animals.
Yeah. They're much simpler.
Yeah, I think the way to change hearts is through their family members, and you see this, and as the population is aging, we are going to have a demographic shift on the elderly needing access to this, and it's very true. We're finding many of the people of our age have parents now that are starting to, who were probably vehemently against it when we were kids, for all the scaremongering reasons we know about, are now wide awake and open to it. And I think it's a very good thing. And we need to keep our attention on that generation, because I think they're going to, very high medical care expenses happen there, and that's where the system's going to break. So we're going to have a big impact there with cannabinoids.
No doubt.
Yeah, so tell us more about Tommy Chong's experience. I understand he started off as a really strong recreational advocate, and of course ended up with prostate cancer himself and curing it with CBD.
Yeah, he had 2 cancer scares actually. First was the prostate cancer. First and foremost, Tommy, he's as pretty much as you see him is how he is, but he is such a believer of the plant. I mean, anytime I run across a new CBD cream or anything, he's willing to be like the guy that tries that out and see how it works. He's a great test pilot. But when it comes down to like treating his cancer, it was a pretty big scare. The prostate cancer initially was like, okay, this one's gonna be a tough one. And he did really good with that. And then when we beat that, and then within a year it returned, as rectal cancer. And that one usually takes you out. You don't really pull off the rectal cancer. But he was like diligent about it. He watched his diet. He, was doing a fair dose of, he tried to stay away from the chemo, but a lot of CBD suppositories to really kind of get there and do it. And, I remember Tommy going through that, and we were in Vegas when he made the announcement, and you could see it in him. And it was like, okay, is this, he's just turned 80 years old. But he never gave up. He always believed the plant could heal him. He always, everybody was a doubter. His doctors were a doubter. And he ended up pulling it. He had to have, he has a colostomy bag now, but he's alive and he's looking really good, and he's still doing a bunch of shows, with Cheech. And when we go do dispensary visits, that's the one thing I really like working with Tommy, is he gets out and talks to the actual patients and shares their stories with them. And, people are coming up, I use cannabis for my epilepsy, or I have, shaky, we have a guy that works at our work, he has an extra chromosome. It's like helps settle down his chromosome if he takes CBD. And, so he's always wanting to learn, and then to that point, re-educate people as they're coming through the line to get his autograph or whatever. He'll have intimate conversations with them. And as an influencer, I think that's really important, because you have the ability to change someone's mind. Now, these people are usually already consuming cannabis, but then those people go back to their family, and again, it's that daisy chain reaction. So, while Tommy is a campy guy at times, he's really, his mission, I feel like he feels like he's made his mark and he's paid his dues, and I think he's very pleased with the state of cannabis right now, but I think he sees that we have a long way to go still, and he's willing to do the hard work and get boots on the ground.
Well, to Mike's point, I found that when you give lab tours, you start to win people over. These people are afraid of this, and they see all this technology, these mass specs, these sequencers, all tearing apart this plant, and they realize, well, wait a minute, this isn't just about bongs. And they see that there's regimented science behind it. So if you own a lab, please give tours to local politicians and anyone who seems to be concerned about this, because I think that is one thing that really turns people over when they see that there's a tremendous amount of scientific horsepower being applied to this plant. And in many ways, the testing regulations for cannabis, you won't get any of the food in the grocery store to get through this stuff, right? This is above and beyond what we have for most of the produce in the field, and no one knows that. And I think it's important to show them that. We've also been doing some work with even high school students. We've been touring around. We also have some interns here as well, where we're trying to get that younger generation, and this is tough in high school, because they feel like, what are you talking about? You're going to send your students around through a cannabis testing laboratory? Their parents are going to kill us. But it works out, and you then get them very intrigued at a young age to want to march into this field and go into college thinking about, all right, I want to get involved in botany or genetics or something else. So I think the influencing side of this is really important, and we have to take our time to do it.
Just to add, Tommy's always been a big proponent of testing. I mean, even before regulations were put into place, he was very adamant about making sure that, we visited the labs. I'll be visiting a lab next week, another new one. I mean, the other thing is that these labs are still kind of dialing in these devices, and it's moving pretty fast. People don't realize the investments that these labs are having to make to actually stay up to regulation on time with Bureau. And then you got the influx. I mean, it's just crazy demand and flow of cannabis, non-tested weed, tested cannabis. Do you have it? Is it packaged properly? I mean, there's been a lot of crazy regulations that have come down the pipe, and I think the biggest piece as consumers that you should always try to make sure you remember is that you really vote with your dollar. So make sure you're paying attention to the brands that you're purchasing, and you're supporting the ones that are trying to do the best work, and not just the ones that have the highest THC or the ones that you think are going to get the most results out of. Try to focus on who the players are and what they're doing it, the reasons why they're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I see the testing space not just as keeping people honest, but it's a discovery engine. We saw today people are bumping into CBG plants, which we haven't had much access to. So if we're not doing this testing, we're not going to be discovering these new things. Yeah. How have you seen is the NFL against just THC? Do they care about CBD? Do they even know what CBG is?
I don't. THC is what they have listed on the banned substance list.
Okay.
I've had some debates. They claim that even taking a CBD isolate product, you would test positive on an NFL drug test. And the way the drug testing works in the NFL is there's an annual street drugs test, which cannabis is on. And so you have a general idea of when that test is going to happen. It's going to happen sometime between the first day you get to the facility in April to about the first week in training camp. So, you have all of spring, and then basically if you're not tested sometime in there, then, you're definitely getting it that first week in training camp. And then you're free to consume cannabis as you need it, if you're one of those guys. I was one of those guys. And, thank God I was. I wouldn't be in the shape I am now if it wasn't for cannabis. And, that's the truth. I don't see it any other way. I've seen guys who coming out of the league and they've got bottles of pills trailing behind them, and when you get cut and you have a box of stuff from your locker, those pill bottles are in there, and you're really dependent on those, to deal with the nagging injuries you're leaving the team with, whatever surgeries you've had, you're still having pain from. And that now there's no one to help you, figure out, organize your healing regimen, And so you're going home, and these guys are diving into opiate addiction, whatever pills they have available to them, and they're losing their minds. And meanwhile, there's this thing that's non-toxic that could really save them and their families a great deal of pain. The NFL really, I've sat across the desk from the director of player wellness at the NFLPA and having a conversation, when are we going to start looking at cannabis? Why aren't you doing that? And really, she didn't want to hear any of it. She was really scared to have that talk with me. And that was unfortunate. You have this doctor who, can't even really begin to have a conversation about something that actually will help. So, I think it's a bit of a fiasco with the NFL. Frankly, as far as player wellness and player health goes. But I think that, even them having the conversation, Roger Goodell making statements about it, there's been a handful of players in the league now who have come out and had positive comments about cannabis. a defensive end for the Cowboys. Most recently, I think, David Irving. He said, you know, I know what these pills do to me. I don't want to put them in my body. And there's this plant that I can use, and it helps me feel better. You know, and it's really as simple as that. But, you know, the NFL wants to twist it into that guy's an individual. He is destructive to the league, and, you know, he's not NFL caliber.
Right.
So, you know, I think that continuing to push the science and understanding that, and also as well as, you know, having a really positive effect on the NFL's bottom line, having healthier players leave the league, spending less money on pills, et cetera, you know, I think that they could make, you know, get a benefit from it in a myriad ways.
Yeah, well, let's include the audience a little bit. Do you have any, feel free to jump up to the microphone. Do you have any other compelling stories or cases that have helped like turn people? Like what are methods that can help become very potent influencers?
Hi, thank you for doing this. I just want to share that I've been doing education for about a decade now, and down in San Diego County, which is one of the toughest counties in California. And the average age of the people I work with is 67. This revelation in the media that, oh, the new user of cannabis is the boomer is, I don't buy it, because I've been helping these people, and the difference is they're afraid to admit that they use it.
Right.
My husband's 64. He just came out of the cannabis closet 3 years ago, where he'll willingly say, this is what I do to help with my situation. And we believe that he's alive today because of cannabis. You know, Eben, not to the degree that you are, but for various health reasons. So I've seen thousands of people over the last 10 years really get success. I'm glad to be part of today. I'd like to invite you all to come and see our center in Oceanside, California, and see what we're doing.
Oh, excellent.
Thank you.
All right,
What's the name of your center?
Thank you.
I'm going to give you a card.
All right.
All right.
This is what this is about, connections.
I think I have one. We met
Please.
earlier.
Hi, my name is Amanda Crawford. I'm with MyJane. So a couple of things plus a question would be, you know, one, the main question that I've seen really cut through to people is, are you in pain? Do you know someone in pain? Is your mom in pain? What's going on? And just being able to start the conversation from that point. And also what we're doing with MyJane is meeting women where they're at, which is they want to stay in the cannabis closet and they want to be educated while they're still in the closet.
2.5 minutes.
Okay, great. And so, you know, we're approaching education kind of from that, where we bring it into people's homes. What do you guys see on the horizon for education platforms, you know, of the future? You know, I know with the media channel that you have, you know, do you have any insights into, you know, kind of what's going on? I know Green Flower Media is a great resource, but what else are you guys seeing out there?
So, you know, I think the way that new customers or patients can get educated is somewhat fractured, and people that are in the closet, if you will, are probably not going to pick up a High Times, or probably not going to do much research online, or follow anybody on social media, or go to a cup. So I think, you know, it's one of those things where, again, we have to create this normalization in society, and you have to be willing to share. So if somebody isn't out of the cannabis closet, my recommendation is share with them articles, share with them, you know, a social media channel that they want to follow. Maybe, you know, they don't want to follow the gnarliest, you know, cannabis heads out there, but there are tons and tons of social media channels and videos and articles that can be shared. I try to keep a few going out to people that I think it can help. I mean, you don't want to be that pushy person, because I think, you know, when you're in cannabis, everybody automatically says, I don't want to smoke, I'm not looking to smoke it, I'm just asking some questions. And you're like, I'm not going to try to smoke with you right now. You're asking me questions, I'm trying to answer them. Right. So I think that's, you know, compile some education that you feel is really helpful. The in-home thing is a beautiful idea. I mean, I think I'd love to talk more with that about you, you know, so we can see how we can maybe help with that.
That would be amazing. I will catch you after this.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've been taking acid cannabinoids for about 7 years, and I think about sometimes different types of sports. If I were to compete against people who wasn't taking it, aside from the fact would I be doping, But I thought, well, maybe there should be a team called the THCAs.
Nice. And you're talking raw cannabinoid acids, right? Not acid and cannabinoids.
Like THCA, right?
Let's not discriminate.
Proper distinction.
All right, hello, I'm Maha. I run and founded a cannabis student group here at UCLA called Canna Club. Eben has spoken to us before, which was
Yep.
awesome.
You're
And-
awesome.
Thank you. I think reaching out to students, college students, is a huge, huge thing right now. It's, I guess, moving forward with the youth, even with just their interest, but also with how curious they are on an academic level. So I really, really want not just y'all, but everyone in the room to kind of reach out to students and teach them. We want to learn about all this, and we want to be part of all this. And there are age demographics to focus on, like the older consumer, but us students also want to be a part of that and help older people kind of get situated with cannabis, as well as us learning simultaneously. But I wanted to thank you, Eben, for coming and speaking to us students. I really hope some of you cannabis industry leaders and professionals take the chance and educate even the youth and let them know what this is all about. It's not just a drug. It could help their parents. It could help them streamline their career into helping others. And yeah, I really want to see more effort with kids, college kids, and the college market. And see what we could do as a youth in cannabis. So.
Excellent.
No doubt.
Excellent.
You guys should definitely, if you get a chance, go speak at the Canna Club. These guys, they're doing great work. I mean, I think there's something really to that. You know, there should be Cannabis 101 at universities across America.
I agree.
Absolutely.
You should be able to take a class and learn.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Good, good, good.
So we just started our own Cannabis 101 curriculum. It was organized and designed by students for students, because
Love
the
it.
administration isn't going to
No.
instill a new academic cannabis program. So we started it. Dr.
Awesome.
Jeff Chen taught our first class. Yeah, thank you. No, it took a lot of time, but we had the support of other industry leaders, and we had your support, Eben, to even speak to us and speak to other student athletes. But no, we've started a curriculum. We have it every 2 weeks. Kat Packer will be talking on November 14th, speaking about the current LA atmosphere and stuff on cannabis. But no, we've already started a curriculum, and I really hope it gets to the administration. We're doing our best as students, but we also need the support of, I guess, the industry leaders and the people who've been in the game for longer than we have. So yeah, no, thank you.
All right, excellent, excellent.
This is great. Eben, good to see you again.
Good to
Brother.
see you.
My name is Michael Masterman-Smith, and I'm a cancer biologist here, and I'll be presenting tomorrow on aspects of cannabinoid
Thank you.
therapy for cancer.
What you do.
Yeah, well, I think what you guys are doing. That's sort of my, scientific but political contribution, because there's a lot of, you get, when you reach people on a real level of just like, like Eben says, it's like, we got some banged up players, they need to be taken care of. And my question is to really, I'm trying to understand this concept of how do we, in a political environment where we're supposed to be, we have to be advocates for what we're doing, but at the same time, where do we decide, forget trying to convince the people that aren't going to be convinced, and how do we build our relationships? And maybe each person has an individual, it's like you worked with Dana-Farber. Maybe talk about what was that like to deal with the doctors and talk to the doctors, and what were they responsive to? And maybe Eben, answer this question is that who was responsive? Who are the folks that will be a part of this movement that we can talk to? Because we know we're going to be, it's almost like, should we be in denial of the guys that don't want us to and or just have some opposition to it, and just focused on who's receptive? Or maybe what percentage do we put up the fight to the ones who don't want to listen, and versus the percentage of folks where, hey, listen, we're going to get all these other folks on board and let's focus on there. give me that perspective.
I'll give you that
Where do we put
perspective.
our effort?
The people who don't want to learn, just don't waste your time on them. Because go after the people who want to learn, who want to be educated, because those are the ones that you're going to turn into advocates and the zealots and the future of cannabis. The people who are staunchly against it, you're going to waste a lot of time with those folks. Get the large part of the herd and let them convince the other guys later on. That's how I market.
I would agree with that, and I'll weigh in on the Dana-Farber experience. Is that we found it was best to be able to speak in their language. We walked in there with the DNA sequence of the tumor, which Dana-Farber loves to sequence tumors. And we're like, look, we have this.
UCLA.
Yeah, and I've worked with Stan Nelson. There's great work in this field. It's sequenced from the first glioblastoma genomes, right? And so you walk in with that saying, this is pointing to AKT inhibitors, and here's 10 papers on cannabinoids being potent ones, and everything else you're offering is phase 2B. These aren't, they're non-toxic, and he was just, let's do it. And so I think it helped going in there with speaking their language. I think if we didn't have that sequencing data and we didn't have those papers, he just would have been like, if you want to do it for pain, that's fine. It's off our books. We don't want to know about it, but we're not going to get in your way. That conversation changed to being, okay, let's do the sequencing in his bloodstream every quarter if we can. That way we can monitor the mutation that we found in his bloodstream, because the PSA number's gone. We can't trust that anymore after he went through immunotherapy. It just wrecked it. So that really is what I think brought them in. And so I'm glad that you're here, because you're doing this type of work as well. And I think there's more, we'll convince more oncologists if we are on that table with them.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the audience that would be interested. These are things that, as in the cancer community, we were always a part of it. We always knew it, but unless we had a movement behind us, we were not really going to be able to come up here and be vocal about it. So I'm at that leading edge, and I'm going to keep on going. And you can tell all your friends that yes, cannabinoids can be used to treat cancer. We're getting there, and so maybe that's some of the things that folks like me entered to the conversation. But support the physicians, support the folks that are trying to do the medical aspects of it. I think that's going to be a great potential. But media guy, what are you going to do in your talks and in your podcast? We partied last night. I forget your name. Oh yeah. We had a good time. And so conference center.
One
loves
drink.
Us
we had one.
They
drink.
were like, you guys are the coolest, smart guys in the rooms.
For us, it really is our desire to become the platform where people feel comfortable learning about cannabis, whether it's through a podcast, whether it's through watching one of our broadcasts, whether it's through listening to us on, or following us on social media. I think, I agree with BigMike about not necessarily pursuing people that don't have an inclination to embrace cannabis, but I think at the same time it is you do it around everybody, and eventually that one last person gets flipped. Yeah. And I think that's going to take some time. So for us, it's really about trying to not hype things up. Everything is different for every customer. So just really helping people understand what edibles will do to you and what microdosing means, and kind of some of the basics around consumption. Is really where we try to focus, because that's where we have them right at the point of sale. They're watching a TV right before they're about to walk in, or it's in the flower room. So we try to have the brands have a good call to action, and really try to provide an answer, and at least create questions for them to ask the bud tender when they're about to make a purchase.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Keep up the good work.
Excellent. Well, we'll go one more question, because I think some folks are curious where food's going to be, and have some announcements there.
Cool. So we have a little YouTube show that we do on Sunday afternoons from our little apartment house in Mount Washington, where we talk about the cannabis news across the country every week, and that's how we contribute to normalizing cannabis. And it's called DC 420 LA. On YouTube, Sundays live at 4:20. And we wrote a movie about Alzheimer's and cannabis to, again, help normalize it and share that information to a wider audience. And Eben, your mama loves you. She's the best yoga teacher in all of Los Angeles.
I love that.
Good.
I love that. My mom I have so many she randomly. Thank you. She She helped me get to the NFL, doing yoga at 13.
All right.